identity is very hard to define. So I would probably avoid trying to define it in any one particular way. I think the essence of it, as it's being used by people who are talking about science identity, is that one can imagine oneself being a scientist or being a mathematician, or that doing this activity is so much a part of who one thinks one is that it is nested within this thing we would call self-concept or identity. Now, I think people have many identities, and these are all those aspects of their lives that are very central to what a psychologist would call their self-concept, who they think they are. So, for example, if I have a strong gender identity, I have images of what it means to be, for example, my gender identity would be female. I would have ideas about what it means to be an ideal female. Part of those would be things like femininity, but part of those could also be things like what kind of work I want to do. And it would interface with a science identity to reinforce it to the extent that I think being a female is compatible with being a scientist. And that would have to do with the images I have of both of those identities. So for some people, when you say I'm a scientist, they bring up in their mind Madame Curie, and there's no conflict at all between being a female and being a scientist. For others, that isn't the image of being a scientist to them, and therefore they might be in direct conflict. It would also have to do with things like, well, what do I want to do with my life? And if part of my being a woman is I want to have children, I want to help people, I want to be altruistic, I want to be non-competitive, then if I believe science will inhibit any of those things, then I will keep those two images quite separate. So I break it down into two components, both of which are part of identity, in my view. How good do I think I am? Meaning, can I succeed at this task? And do I want to succeed at this task? And it's when these two things come together and they become central to my core self, I think you have a positive science identity. And if you have those things, then stimulating a science identity in a person's mind will stimulate these same things. Oh, that means I get to do something I like to do. That means I get to do something that I think will further my goals for myself, that I want to be, I want to learn, I want to work hard in school, I want to learn the things I need to do in order to help other people. And so I will engage this task, even if in the moment it's boring or difficult. So this essentially provides a reason to engage the task. And of course, the more you engage the task for personal, intrinsic reasons, the more you will be able to stick with it, even if it gets hard, frustrating, or you get anxious, or other kinds of things that you have to give up something else you love, like going out with your friends. All right, so you have an identity. Why should that affect anything? How does it affect it? And it affects it through motivation, and it affects it through the relative strength of motivation for one activity versus another. So I'm going to do my science in school rather than talk to my friend, because that's more important to me. That's more central to who I am. So I think the term, are you a science person, is actually a quick and dirty term to summarize a lot of underlying complex psychological processes. And of course, it may start out for a young child being science, but somewhere along the way, they're going to learn that there's physics, there's chemistry, there's medicine, there's biology, there's social sciences. Those all have very different implications for how they spend their time. So for example, I went into microbiology because I wanted, when I was an undergraduate, because I wanted to help the world, I wanted to get rid of diseases, and physics had no interest to me whatsoever. So I avoided physics classes. So my identity was not this abstract notion of science at all. It was microbiology. And then it shifted to psychology because I thought, well, I really wanted to understand people. I understood that was equally important to saving lives.